Okay, I think we can conclude. You've seen, not concluding, but starting, you've seen that we came quite physically close to the stage, and I can testify it's not a hologram, it's really Chetak.
And I just realized that you also have 2 legs and not only face.
Strange, huh? Also, thank you very much. We've heard a lot about this whole omnichannel, and I think even Jochen, in his exchange, he mentioned countries and businesses are on a different stage in this omnichannel journey. So where and how did you get started at Merck, and where are you today?
Yeah, I mean, of course, the journey started, fortunately, much before pandemic, but the real accelerator, as all of us experienced, came along with the pandemic. And as we went into it, a lot of points that Dario mentioned in his opening remarks resonated very well. The critical thing for us to understand and reach out to those customers, physicians, to understand their preferences. But if I have to think back, one of the critical factors for us was also to start with our rep at the center. So we went through an exercise to also understand some kind of a segmentation of reps' profile on technological maturity and customer centricity, or focus on customer experience. It gives you kind of nice 2x2 quadrant to really understand where your team lies, and that becomes then the starting point for you to drive some of the capability development efforts as well, which was also very critical, the point that Dario also made in the beginning. It's not about the technology. I mean, technology is already genericized and everyone has access to the same technology. At the end, how you kind of take your people along with on that journey.
So again, it's about people. We've heard it, I think, in all the sessions so far. So obviously very important, but technology is there to help us to enable. And also Dario, he mentioned in his introduction this word of fatigue. There is digital fatigue, there is this transformation fatigue. So how have you overcome that, or are you trying to overcome that?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long answer, and apart from different fatigues, I think one fatigue, at least I have been very vocal in the organization, is also fatigue of pilots. We don't have the luxury like BioNTech to start everything from scratch. So you are trying to steer a large ship with a very strong embedded culture and operating fabric, and easy workaround is let's start a pilot and we see what happens. And I'm not against experimentation, but the real issue is that we end up having pandemic of pilots in the organization. And there is a joke that as an industry, we probably have more pilots than airline industries. And that's the issue.
Maybe best, huh?
Probably now, post-pandemic. But that's the issue. I think for us, how you really scale some of those opportunities as we started going around, seeing value in some of those alternative ways of doing things. The real then challenge is which are the ones you identify and what are the guardrails to then eventually scale them at an enterprise level.
When I hear the word fatigue, and I would like to go a bit deeper there, because when I hear the word fatigue and I look at myself, then I think, okay, I get bored about something. So it's not really attractive for me. So could it mean also that despite everything we've been doing, that the industry still didn't really grasp how to engage their customers at the time they really want, and also getting the right content and message they're looking for?
Absolutely. I mean, we all went through that even in personal lives, the number of Zoom calls, Teams calls can be overwhelming. And then from a customer's perspective, I think, yes, again, what happened in the context of pandemic and triggered by digital is there as a fatigue. But even back in those days when I started my career as a medical representative, even there you could experience that there was a fatigue of medical reps. So if you don't have the content which really resonate with the needs of the customer, you end up having that fatigue, and it gets expressed in different forms. And what happened in the context of digital world is that it was much easier for customer to express that fatigue than in a physical world. There is still this emotional connect, and here it is as good as simply clicking on the leave button and I have something else to do and I move on. So the margin of error for tolerance of that fatigue has gone down significantly, which means that we need to get our acts together when it comes to content and when it comes to driving that personalization experience.
So the decision power has shifted from the company, the rep side, to really the HEP side in this case.
It was always the case. It was always the case. What I'm saying is that the tolerance or margin of error has shrunk to razor thin right now, and so that's the key difference.
So let's focus on this, reducing or making this space for error smaller. How are you going along on that journey? How do you do this?
I mean, it's a journey, and the way we are looking at is also to step back, to reflect on the previous discussion, to look at different things that we kicked off in last 2-3 years. What is meaningful in the context of that future that we are envisaging, and how we still bring back some of the benefits of the older ways of doing things. At the end, realization is that the physical connect is still important, and we are right in the middle of preparation for ASCO, which is a very major event, as you can imagine, for any oncology company. And we are already looking at more than 1,000 meetings with physicians at the event, and that speaks of importance of that face-to-face connect, which is so critical, and both sides appreciate that, which is heartwarming, because you're not seeing a world which is like a driverless car, but there is a human at the center, both from a customer's perspective and from organization's perspective.
Coming back to that human being, we're all, I always say, animals of habit. And when I was at the customer side, when I was at Reckitt, I also saw that when the pandemic was getting a bit loosened, that the tendency was, okay, let's go back face to face. And when I talk to my colleagues, I see even in some markets, they are going again full blast, 100% face to face. What is your position on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, I think consensus is already out there that future will be hybrid. It is already hybrid, even with this event as an example. So that is given. I think what will make a difference from a competitiveness of a company versus the rest is how quickly you are able to pivot from digital versus physical, to an extent where if I have to maybe fast forward to that hybrid world, we should aim to a world where you don't really differentiate which side of the hybrid you are, whether physical or digital. And that means personalization, that means really having clear understanding of customers' needs, and then how you rally rest of the organization towards delivering that experience.
So talking about personalization, that brings us to data, the whole tagging kind of world. How do you see that evolving, and especially looking at, we heard it also in the previous discussion, machine learning, artificial intelligence, augmented reality. How do you see that underpinning what this front hybrid engagement model should bring as value to the customer side?
Yeah, if I have to count some of the major wins from a transformation perspective from the pandemic experience, putting half glass full, what are the gains that we have realized as an industry, and also from my experience, is around demonstrating that proof of value of what that smart analytics, advanced analytics could bring to the organization. And where we are, again, bringing back to the point that I was saying, that how do you make sure that it gets scaled and then it sustains to a level that you don't have to wire those algorithms every time, but there is an element of constant evolution. And that's where I think the major challenge as well lies, because we all know from experience that it is really challenging. Again, I would love to be in a situation where biotech is, where you are starting from scratch and you set up a nice data warehouse and everyone follows that. How you transform the legacy data architecture, which is so fragmented, which is so kind of still in different silos. You went through this experience of demonstrating that if you bring it all together in a closed environment, you really realize disproportionate value.
Yeah.
But then to scale it across 60 affiliate and then really drive that across 5,000 reps in the organization, I think that's where the biggest kicker will come in from an evolution perspective.
So if we could, if our wishes could come true, tabula rasa sometimes would be a great thing to really relaunch certain aspects. If I look behind me, so a mandatory question is, what do you see next? You had your crystal ball with you. Where is Merck heading to?
Yeah, a couple of things. One, I said we certainly look towards that hybrid world. And as we look towards that hybrid world, that future which we should aim for is the one where you as a customer don't realize which side of that hybrid world you are, between digital versus physical. And that as a vision, as a starting point, then you look back into the organization to really understand what needs to be done. And that will certainly take us through different components of classical change management approach, looking at some of the processes as well, because let's face it, what happened in the context of pandemic is that we were forced into this huge social experimentation, and organization responded, but now is the time to really challenge some of the traditional SOPs when we look at, for example, content authoring, and how we kind of take some of the lessons that we have learned to rewire the organization towards that future state. Same will be going around analytics standpoint, how you scale that analytics to drive precision engagement of the future. It also, as we speak, there are multiple cases in front of us around how you transform that go-to-market model in the country, because the fact of life is that reps are not going to have that many calls as it used to happen in the future, in the past.
Yeah.
So then the whole even territory dynamics or the definition of what is a rep's territory is undergoing a change than what it used to be before.
So it looks really exciting, because what you were just mentioning, and I like this, it's challenging standard operating procedures, etc., which have been there often as a kind of safeguard, often also as an excuse. So a tremendous kind of change in the culture of companies. So a big elephant in the room again.
And as we say, I mean, even if it is a cliche, it's not a dash, it is a marathon, it's a journey. And what is important is to really look at the gains that we have realized in last 2 years, nurture and scale those gains. But at the same time, some of the things didn't work, and it's okay. And then how you kind of weed that out to make sure that your resources are getting prioritized, because one thing which remains constant, which was there pre-pandemic, even today and in the future, is that our resources are always going to be finite. And it will all come down to prioritization. And the question that we will have from the management is that, okay, this is how the spend mix looked like in the traditional model. So if you are saying that you want to invest there, where are we cutting?
Yeah.
So that's a simple question, difficult to answer, but that's where some of the future challenges.
I'm happy you're sitting in that seat. My last question is, if you would want this audience to walk away with one of your key learnings what would it be?
One learning which struck me the most very early in the pandemic, and somehow it got ingrained in my memory, is that never go with preconceived biases. And as we went in the pandemic, one of the classical assumption that we were making is that we are talking about digital ways of connecting with people. We had countries and geographies where we had highly tenured reps, and we would assume that we need more of those millennials to drive new ways of embracing technologies. And the reality was that some of those tenured reps were the ones who were having the longest interactions, even remotely with their physicians. So as I say, I mean, at the end, relationships matter. If we are adding value to our customers, technology is just an enabler. It's a mean to an end, and I think we should not forget the end in mind.
So it's about embracing the change, making it part of your journey, and reinventing ourselves all the time.
Exactly.
Okay, perfect. Chetak, thank you very much for this nice discussion we had, and I hope that the audience can take a couple of things away, and if they need more questions, they can always come and find you.
Thank you. Thank you.